What if I told you that in 1859, the entire world's technology was wiped out in a single night, and the government has been hiding the true cause for over 150 years? Imagine waking up to see the northern lights over the deserts of Hawaii. Imagine telegraph machines catching fire while unplugged, typing out messages from no one. This isn't science fiction, it's the Carrington Event. But the history books left out the most terrifying part. It's about to happen again. And this time, we aren't ready. Chapter 1. The Midnight Noon. The date was September 1, 1859. In the soot-covered streets of Victorian London and the gold rush camps of California, the world was changing. The telegraph was the Victorian internet, a web of copper wires stitching the globe together. Richard Carrington, a wealthy amateur astronomer, was in his private observatory in Red Hill. He wasn't looking for ghosts, he was looking at the sun. Suddenly, he saw it, two patches of intense white light erupting from a massive cluster of sunspots. It was a coronal mass ejection, a CME, 1 billion tons of solar plasma screaming toward Earth at millions of miles per hour. He didn't know it yet, but he had just witnessed the opening shot of a cosmic war. Chapter 2. The Ghost in the Wires. 12 hours later, the fire hit the atmosphere. In the United States, it was after midnight, but the sky didn't look like night. From Boston to New Orleans, the heavens turned a deep blood-red crimson. In the Rocky Mountains, the light was so bright that gold miners woke up thinking it was morning. They started frying bacon and drinking coffee, only to realize the sun hadn't risen. The sky itself was glowing. But the real horror was happening in the telegraph offices. Operators in New York and Philadelphia reported sparks flying from their equipment. Some were literally knocked unconscious by electric shocks. In one of the most famous and chilling exchanges in history, two operators, one in Portland and one in Boston, discovered they could communicate without batteries. "Please cut off your battery entirely," the Boston operator tapped out. "Done. We are running on the current of the aurora alone. How do you receive my writing?" "Very well," came the reply. "The sky is providing the power." The Earth's magnetic field was screaming. Chapter 3. The Secret Records. While the public marveled at the blood skies, a small group of scientists and Smithsonian intellectuals realized the implications. If the world had been more advanced, if we had satellites, power grids, and GPS, civilization would have collapsed in 24 hours. Deep in the National Archives, there are letters from the 1860s describing atmospheric madness. Farmers reported their compasses spinning wildly. Birds, which rely on the Earth's magnetic field for navigation, were found dead by the thousands, confused and exhausted. But the most classified data suggest that the 1859 event wasn't a fluke, it was a pulse. Modern NASA data shows that we had a near miss in 2012. If that solar flare had erupted just 1 week earlier, it would have hit Earth, causing trillions of dollars in damage and sending us back to the Stone Age. Chapter 4. The 2026 Connection. Why are people talking about this now? Because the sun operates on an 11-year cycle, and we are currently approaching the solar maximum. In the United States, our power grid is more fragile than ever. A Carrington-level event today wouldn't just make the sky pretty, it would fry the transformers that power our hospitals, our water pumps, and our phones. We live in a world of glass and silicon, built on the assumption that the sun will remain quiet. But history tells a different story. The red skies of 1859 were a warning that the very star that gives us life has the power to take back everything we've built in the blink of an eye. Chapter 5. The Blue Apple Incident. The 1921 New York Railroad Storm. If 1859 was the warning, May 1921 was the demonstration. History books rarely mention the Great May Storm, but in the archives of the New York Times, the headlines were apocalyptic. At 7:04 a.m., a massive solar burst hit the northern hemisphere. In an instant, the signal tower at 57th Street in New York City burst into flames. The automatic switching system, the pride of American engineering, began moving trains onto the same tracks. It wasn't a mechanical failure, it was a celestial ghost. The hidden fact. Scientists at the time realized that the Earth's magnetic field was acting like a giant magnifying glass. The ground itself became electrified. In Sweden, telephone stations burned to the ground. In the US, the Blue Apple line, the primary link between DC and the West Coast, melted inside its lead casing. Chapter 6, Project Black Sky, the Cold War Connection. During the 1950s, the US government realized that a solar flare wasn't just a natural disaster, it was a weapon of mass destruction that required no uranium. Under the Eisenhower administration, a secret study was commissioned, Operation Solar Shield. The goal was to determine if a solar flare could be predicted to mask a nuclear strike. If the sky was screaming with aurora and the radios were dead, how would the president know if the Russians had launched? This led to the creation of the Deep Space Climate Observatory, DISCOW. But here is what they don't tell you. DISCOW only gives us a 15 to 30-minute warning. Imagine 330 million people in the United States. Now imagine the power grid, the lifeblood of every hospital, ATM, and water pump failing in 30 minutes. Chapter 7, The Day Without Yesterday, a near-future scenario. Let's fast forward to the present day. The year is 2026. The sun is reaching its solar maximum. In a high-security bunker in Cheyenne Mountain, Colorado, a technician sees a spike on the monitor. It's not an 1859 level event. It's bigger. It's an X-90 class flare. T plus 8 minutes, the light hits. High-frequency radio goes silent. Pilots over the Atlantic lose contact with ground control. GPS signals begin to drift by hundreds of meters. T plus 12 hours, the heavy plasma arrives. The magnetosphere bows and cracks. The surge. In suburbs across America, smart meters explode off the sides of houses. The massive high-voltage transformers, the ones that take 2 years to manufacture and cost millions, start to hum. Then they vibrate. Finally, they leak boiling oil and melt. Within 48 hours, the United States is dark. No internet, no running water, no supply chain. Chapter 8, The Ghost of Richard Carrington. Why did Carrington die obsessed? Because he saw something in those sunspots that he didn't put in his official reports. Legend says his private journals, now allegedly held by a private London estate, contain sketches of structures within the solar fire. Was the 1859 event a natural cycle, or is the sun reacting to something deeper in the galaxy? Modern solar preppers in the U.S. Southwest believe the sun is a pulsar clock. Every 150 to 200 years, it clears the dust from its orbit with a massive discharge. We are currently 165 years past the last one. We are living on borrowed time. Chapter 9, The Ghost Infrastructure of the Midwest. If you drive through the desolate plains of Nebraska or the high deserts of Nevada, you'll see them. Massive, windowless concrete monoliths. No signs, no logos, just high-tension wires and 24-hour armed security. To the locals, they are data centers, but to the Department of Energy, DOE, they are something else. Inside these hardened vaults, the U.S. government is quietly installing vacuum tube technology. The scientific irony. Why vacuum tubes? because they are immune to the electromagnetic pulse of a solar flare. While your $1,200 iPhone has billions of microscopic transistors that will melt instantly, a 1940-style vacuum tube will keep humming. The elite aren't moving forward, they are moving backward to survive. Chapter 10: The Aurora Cults of 1880. Before we look at the future, we must look at the lost decade of the 1880s. After the 1859 event, a strange phenomenon swept through the American South. People began reporting the hum. It was a low-frequency vibration that seemed to come from the ground itself. Secret societies, like the Order of the Solar Crown, believed the 1859 flare had seeded the Earth with celestial energy. They claimed that certain people, resonators, could now hear the sun's internal rhythm. In a small town in Tennessee, an entire community disappeared in 1882, leaving behind only journals describing a doorway of light that opened when the northern lights touched the soil. Are these just legends? Or did the Carrington event alter the very physics of our planet? Chapter 11: The Blackout Drills of 2024 through 2025. In late 2024, several major U.S. cities experienced unexplained power surges and localized blackouts. The official story was cyber attacks or aging infrastructure. The truth: the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NERC, was running a secret stress test called GridX7. They weren't testing for hackers, they were simulating a G5-class solar storm. The results were catastrophic. In the simulation, 60% of the U.S. Eastern Interconnection, the main power grid, collapsed within 90 seconds. The black start capabilities, the ability to restart the grid without outside power, failed because the transformers were physically fused shut. The water-food deadline. Without electricity, the pumps that provide water to Los Angeles and Phoenix stop. Within 72 hours, 30 million people have no water. Within 7 days, the grocery stores are empty shells. Chapter 12: The Faraday Cities. Deep in the Ozark Mountains and the bunkers of West Virginia, a new type of community is forming. They are the silicates. They aren't your typical doomsday preppers with canned beans and rifles. They are MIT-trained engineers and ex-NASA scientists. They are building Faraday cities. These are entire housing complexes wrapped in copper mesh and buried 50 feet underground. They are archiving the entirety of human knowledge, Wikipedia, medical journals, agricultural blueprints, on gold-layered optical discs that can survive for 1,000 years without a computer. They know that when the big one hits, the internet won't just go down, it will be erased. Every cloud server, every digital bank account, every family photo stored on a server in Virginia will be scrambled into digital noise. Chapter 13: The Signal from the Deep. In January 2026, the Parker Solar Probe, which is currently touching the sun, sent back a final burst of data before its sensors went dark. The data showed that the sun's magnetic poles aren't just flipping, they are shattering. The sun is no longer behaving like a stable star. It is behaving like a dying furnace that is about to sneeze. And in the cosmic scale of things, a solar sneeze is enough to wipe out 2,000 years of human progress. Chapter 14: The New Zealand Exodus, the Safe Zone Conspiracy. In the high-stakes world of Silicon Valley and Wall Street, there is a phrase whispered in private clubs: the 45th parallel. Why have billionaires like Peter Thiel, Sam Altman, and Jeff Bezos spent hundreds of millions of dollars on massive estates in New Zealand and southern Chile? It isn't just for the scenery. the magnetic reality. During a Carrington-level solar storm, the Earth's magnetic field peels back at the poles. The northern hemisphere, where the US, Europe, and China sit, takes the brunt of the radiation, but the southern hemisphere, specifically the deep islands of the south, acts as a natural magnetic shadow. In the late 2010s, a secret document leaked from the FEMA Deep State Archives, Project Southward Bound. It outlined a plan to move the functional core of the US government to a series of underground bunkers in the southern Alps of New Zealand. While the American public is told to buy go bags and flashlights, the elite are building hydroponic cities powered by geothermal energy, thousands of miles away from the kill zone. Chapter 15. The Blackout Ghost Ships of the Atlantic. In early 2025, satellite imagery, before the interference began, showed something chilling. Hundreds of massive cargo ships owned by shell companies linked to the Department of Defense were being anchored in the middle of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. They weren't carrying oil, they weren't carrying grain. They are floating server farms. The US government realized that the ground grid would be fried by the Earth's crust becoming a giant conductor, but the deep ocean, water is a natural insulator. By sinking data pods miles under the ocean surface, tethered to these ghost ships, they are attempting to save the digital DNA of the United States, the banking records, the military codes, and the AI algorithms that will run the new world after the lights go out. Chapter 16. The 1859 Coded Prophecies, the Hopi Tablets. To understand the future, we have to go back to the southwest United States. In 1859, while the sky was burning red, a group of Hopi elders in Arizona reportedly withdrew into their kivas, underground prayer chambers. They didn't see the aurora as a disaster, they saw it as the purification of the blue star. According to oral tradition recorded by a rogue Smithsonian anthropologist in 1890, the Hopi claimed that every few centuries the sun cleans the mental noise of humanity. When the wires scream and the iron paths melt, the Great Spirit is resetting the clock. Only those who remember the soil will hear the next song. Modern researchers at Los Alamos National Laboratory have been cross-referencing these myths with ice core data. They found something terrifying. Every time the sun has a grand maximum, like 774 AD and 1859 AD, there is a corresponding spike in human mutation rates. The solar flare doesn't just kill electronics, it edits our DNA. Chapter 17. The Analog Resistance. As we approach the 2026 climax, a new subculture has emerged in America, the ham radio underground. Across the Appalachian Mountains, thousands of analog rebels have ditched smartphones for 1950s-era shortwave radios. They use a code called solar speak. They know that when the satellites fall, the only way to communicate will be bouncing radio waves off the ionosphere, the very thing that will be on fire. They are the ones who discovered the green flash anomaly. In late 2025, the sun began emitting a specific frequency of green light during sunset. To the average person, it's a beautiful photo op. To the analog resistance, it's the sound of the sun's magnetic shield finally cracking. Chapter 18. The Last Message from the ISS. The story takes a heartbreaking turn in 2026. The International Space Station is the canary in the coal mine. In a leaked and quickly deleted audio file from the ISS commander, he describes the sun not as a ball of fire, but as a pulsing heart. It's not just heat, he whispered to his family in a private link. It's a signal. The sun is talking to the Earth, and the Earth is screaming back. We can see the atmosphere vibrating like a bell. Tell them the 1859 event was just the clearing of its throat. The real shout is coming. 2 hours later, the ISS communication array melted. The station is now a ghost ship in orbit, waiting for the final wave to bring it down. Chapter 19, T-0, The Flash over Washington, D.C. It happened at 11:14 a.m. EST, February 15, 2026. The sun didn't look different to the naked eye, but for the satellites of the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, SOHO, it was the end. A halo CME, the rarest and most violent of solar eruptions, was heading directly for Earth's magnetic sweet spot. In Washington, D.C., the first sign wasn't darkness, it was chaos in the air. The ghost navigations. At Reagan National Airport, 3 Boeing 737s simultaneously lost their GPS lock. The pilots looked at their screens. They were over the Atlantic Ocean according to the computers. In reality, they were 500 feet above the Potomac River. The blue spark on the hill. Inside the Capitol building, the massive chandeliers began to hum. A security guard later reported seeing St. Elmo's fire, a ghostly blue electrical glow dancing on the tips of the statues. Then the transatlantic cable snapped, not physically, but electromagnetically. The internet, the nervous system of the world, died in a scream of static. Chapter 20, The Copper Fire, Hour 1 to Hour 6. In the first 6 hours, the United States realized that this wasn't a power outage, this was a physical dissolution. The transformer paradox. The U.S. power grid relies on approximately 2,100 extra high voltage EHV transformers. They are the size of houses. When the solar DC current hit the lines, it didn't just blow a fuse, it turned the copper coils into molten slag. In Chicago, the L trains froze on their tracks. In New York, 400,000 people were trapped in subways as the pumps failed and the tunnels began to seep with Hudson River water. But the most terrifying thing happened in the smart homes of Virginia and Maryland. Lithium-ion batteries in Teslas and home storage units began to thermally run away. Without a grid to dump excess voltage, the houses themselves became giant resistors. By 4 p.m., the red skies returned, but this time they were joined by the orange glow of thousands of localized fires that no fire department could reach. Chapter 21, The Analog Ghost of 1859 returns. While the cities burned, a strange phenomenon occurred in the rural Midwest. Farmers in Iowa who still used 1940s-era John Deere tractors, mechanical, no microchips, found that they were the only ones who could move. In a small town near Des Moines, an 80-year-old telegraph enthusiast named Elias Torn did the unthinkable. He had spent 40 years maintaining a private, hard-wired copper line between his farm and his brother's house 10 miles away. As the fiber optic cables of the world melted, Elias's primitive brass key began to click. The message, "Sky is red, all glass is dead, I am coming on the horse." This was the birth of the new Pony Express. In a world without digital signals, information became the most expensive commodity on Earth. A handwritten note carried by a person on a bicycle or a horse was suddenly worth more than 1 billion bits of lost data. Chapter 22, The Vault of 1859, The Smithsonian's Secret. As the Smithsonian Institution in D.C. was being evacuated, a team of Special Archives curators didn't head for the exits, they headed for basement level 4. Hidden behind a lead-lined door marked Geomagnetic Research was a collection of items that had been suppressed since the original Carrington Event. The induction maps. Maps from 1860 showing exactly where the Earth's crust is thin, places where the solar energy enters the ground and stays. The mechanical internet. a series of steam-powered calculating engines, difference engines designed by Charles Babbage's disciples, intended to run a civilization without electricity. The government knew. Since the 1850s, a shadow government had been preparing for the day the sun reclaimed its throne. They didn't save the people, they saved the blueprints. Chapter 23: The Resonator Children. By the 48th hour, a terrifying and miraculous report began to spread among the survivors in the Appalachian Trail. Children under the age of 12 were claiming they could hear the aurora. Physicians, now working by candlelight, theorized that the sheer intensity of the geomagnetic storm was interacting with the magnetite in the human brain. These children, dubbed the solar-sighted, could point toward the North Pole and describe the shapes of the magnetic fields. They weren't just surviving, they were evolving. They could sense a second pulse was coming, and according to the children, the first wave was just the knock at the door. The second wave was the guest entering the house. Chapter 24: The Exodus of the Concrete Jungles. By hour 72, the Great Silence had turned into a great panic. In New York City, the realization hit: the food was not coming. The just-in-time supply chain, governed by algorithms and GPS-guided trucks, had vanished. The George Washington Bridge became a graveyard of dead electronics. Thousands of Teslas, Mercedes, and Ford F-150s sat frozen, their brains fried by the electromagnetic surge. People began to walk. It was the Great Walk of 2026. The historical echo. As people trekked north toward the Catskills, they found themselves following the old 19th-century carriage routes. Modern highways were useless labyrinths of stalled steel, but the old dirt paths, neglected for a century, were clear. The survivors weren't just moving in space, they were moving back in time. Chapter 25: The Iron Horse Resurrection. While the modern world died, a miracle occurred in Strausburg, Pennsylvania. The town is home to a railroad museum filled with 19th-century steam locomotives, the iron horses of Richard Carrington's era. As the solar storm raged, a group of retired engineers and history buffs realized something incredible. Steam engines have no microchips. While the high-speed Amtrak trains were fused to their rails, the 1920s-era steam boilers were thirsty for coal and water. They fired up the Decapod number 90. For the first time in 100 years, the whistle of a steam train didn't signify a tourist attraction, it signified the rebirth of American logistics. This train became the Ark. It began moving medicine and wheat across the state, immune to the sun's fire. The analog age had officially begun. Chapter 26: The Secret of the Solar Handshakes. Back in the underground bunkers of Mount Weather, Virginia, the shadow government was facing a crisis. They had the power, they had the food, but they had lost the solar handshake. A classified 1859 document authored by a secret advisor to Abraham Lincoln was unearthed. It claimed that the Carrington Event wasn't just a storm, it was an information dump. The theory, known as the Aether bit hypothesis, suggests that the sun's plasma carries encoded data. In 1859, telegraph operators reported typing messages they didn't write. In 2026, the few surviving AI systems in shielded bunkers started generating ghost code. The AI wasn't malfunctioning, it was translating. The sun was transmitting a mathematical sequence that predicted the Earth's next magnetic pole flip. The revelation: we weren't being attacked, we were being updated, but our digital bodies were too weak to survive the download. Chapter 27: The New Frontier: Survival of the Skilled. In the suburbs of America, the social hierarchy flipped overnight. The software engineer who made $400K a year was now helpless. The blacksmith, the loom weaver, and the small-scale farmer became the new aristocracy. Chapter 28: The Face in the Fire, Carrington's Final Secret. The story returns to the year 1859 for a moment. We find Richard Carrington on his deathbed. He whispers to his doctor about a drawing he hid behind the wallpaper of his study. The drawing isn't of a sunspot, it's a map of the Earth's interior. Carrington realized that the sun doesn't just hit the atmosphere, it rings the Earth like a bell. The energy travels down to the core, the 2026 consequence. As the second wave of the solar storm hits, the Earth's core begins to expand. Volcanoes in the ring of fire that have been silent for 10,000 years begin to smoke. The sun isn't just killing our phones, it's changing the shape of our continents.